the first part of chain defending is breaking the chain, but I'll explain what chain defending is first. And basically, here's your back four when the ball is central. This might be your back four defending in the final third. Now, if you imagine this like a chain, it's like there's rope between them, and then as they shift, they obviously move together. Now, the challenge when playing a back four, and it doesn't happen so much if you've got a back five, but definitely with a back four, is when the ball goes wide, what happens now? Now, traditionally, I think most coaches would say that we must get pressure on the ball, so the fullback must go out. But then what happens with this space in here? What happens with this space in between the centre-back and the fullback? So now one option is that the centre-back goes across into this area here to cover and deal with that, because potentially you're going to get runners in that move into that space. But now what happens with this space here? Now you're going to say, of course, the other centre-back comes across, which he must, and then the furthest fullback must come across. But now potentially what you get is you get 2v2s if there are crosses that are coming to the box, and potentially even 3v2s if you get an extra player join. So what you're doing is you're basically having your two players here to defend crosses in the box because your centre-back's gone out. So the key question is, when the chain is broken, which means when someone now steps out of their out of the chain, so there's the chain, the two goes out, the two has now broken the chain. Who now fills in the chain? Who now is going to deal with those spaces there? So that's what I'm going to talk about in the next slide now. So we move on to the next annotations board. So now we're talking about filling the chain. I just want to focus on the final third and keep in mind what we were just discussing now. So here's the fullback on the right side. So now the ball, let's say the ball switches and travels out to here. There's the two. Must he go out? It's up to obviously your coaching principles and methodology, but if he goes out to stop the cross, who now deals with potential runners here? Now I'm going to give you a few different scenarios of what can be done to fill the chain, and that's what the videos are going to show in a moment, different ways of filling the chain. So the first method, if you've got strong centre-backs, maybe that your centre-back steps out. If your centre-back steps out, you've of course got this gap here. Who deals with this gap? If the fourth centre-back comes across, then maybe he covers most of that gap. And then now you've got that situation of who deals with the balls into the box, okay? So now maybe if the 7 was to join, you've got this 2v2, but potentially a number 10 may also go and join, and then you potentially got a 3v2, which is definitely dangerous. So one of the methods is that the number 6, if you play with a 6 pivot or one of your 8s, can go and join in to fill the chain. So now you've almost got a back 5 chain, and you've got a 3v2 in the box if you need to use it, or you've got a 3v3 at least if someone joins. So the opposition don't have numerical superiority. If your centre-backs aren't so good 1v1, then another alternative option is to have your 6 go into these spaces here, one of your 6s or 8s. So if the fullback goes out, then the number 6 or 8, he goes and covers, or they go and cover this space here now to deal with that gap. So they're filling in the chain that way. Another option you'll see some teams use, and you'll see in the clip, is the winger now dropping into this space here. So you make that back 5, but the winger is now covering in behind there. So there's a few different ways to break the chain. A last one which you may consider is that if the 5 does go, then the 4 and the 3 are left, but then you might find that your opposite winger is the one who basically tracks to do that. But obviously you've got the concern is your fullback and winger good enough in the air to deal with back post against potentially a striker who may peel off or the opponent winger. So it really depends on the players you've got to utilize and your philosophy and methodology. But the key principle is that when the defenders, the back 4, if you play a back 4 that is, are in a chain, when the chain is broken, who now fills in the gap within the chain? If you do leave it free or spare, you're going to have 2v1 moments where balls get played down the line, then you've got potentially got 1v1 situations in the box and situations for shots and crosses. So who deals with that chain and who fills in those gaps? That's really the key point. Different ways of doing it, but I'm going to show you a few examples now. So here's an example of Liverpool. Now, Liverpool didn't even break the chain in this game, and they've done it in a few games. They did it against Man City last year, where generally what you'd expect is Alexander-Arnold to now go out to deal with the ball in the wide area to prevent crosses. But what you'll see here with Liverpool, they don't want to break the chain. So they decide to deal with crosses instead and allow the cross. So you got Alexander-Arnold would normally go out, but he stays central. They don't allow the space between the chain. And then they decide they're going to deal with the crosses instead, and they manage to do that. And here you'll see another example now where the fullback jumps, and this just makes breaking the chain really clear. So you saw when the chain doesn't get broken, Now you'll see when the chain is broken, and you'll see this space we're talking about here. Whose job is it to fill in the chain and fill in that gap? There you go, you'll see here, this is Real Madrid. You see, I think that's Hazard who would move then to fill in the chain, but there's no threat, so he doesn't have to worry. Now here you see Juventus. Back four, central. Ball goes wide, pressure goes, so the chain is now broken. As he steps out, now you'll see the runner from Atlanta into the space, but you'll see the winger follow. So now you've got this back five, so the chain is now filled again. You also see midfielder that's ready to jump into the chain if needed. Ball goes back central, and then you've got your back four again. So now the chain is now full, but it's central. Challenges are made. There's enough defenders within that chain to cover and deal with the gaps. Okay, so that's chain defending. Really, and obviously not spoken about on coaching